It is so good to be back with y'all. Thank you so much for hosting Thistle Farms today. Thank you, Mike, for continuing to welcome Franny and Anika and Jennifer and I to be a part of this famously wonderful open community in this world. There's not another place like it, and to be continuing on this journey, you guys offer us a chance to have a real relationship out here on the West Coast. That is so fancy for us. It's amazing. And we get to dream, and we get to continue to grow these beautiful global partnerships that we're doing with Mike and Franny's leadership, and with continuing to make ways to connect to some of the women in your community. It is a great gift. And Susan, you bring up such a great point today in the gospel, really. You know, that gospel really raises more questions than it answers. Why would the seventh brother marry her? That would be one good question. But, you know, I had a great professor at the divinity school at Vanderbilt, David Buttrick. He was famously a great preacher. And he always said, don't let the lectionary get in the way of you preaching the gospel. And we can put this in a larger context, right? In this chapter, Jesus has already entered Jerusalem and already wept over the city, both for its beauty and its sadness and its treatment and what's coming. And he's been preaching and teaching all along the way, and now he's in, the religious capital, and he's talking to the religious authority, and he's still preaching the same message that you guys have been preaching here forever. It's freedom. He's preaching about freedom to them, and he's trying to help them so much who are caught up in all of this external and internal walls that block them, to say there is a difference between rules and the rule of life. You know, the rule of life, another word for that is trellis. Do you know that? Where you build this whole place that we can root to rise and to grow from. It's this practice discipline towards freedom. He's trying to remind them the difference between the dogma and the doggedness of love. That we worship a God of life that's dogged about blooming wherever love is planted. I know that after almost 30 years of ordination, that I truly believe less now than I did when I first started. Less things, at least. But what I'm left believing, I believe with my whole heart, and I will give my life doing it. That I'm trying to get more dogged than dogma. And so Jesus is saying to the Sadducees, he's going to go on and preach, and he's going to talk about fig trees. And he's going to talk about seeing the widow and the beauty of that gift in the temple. And he's going to continue to say, can you see with new eyes? Can you open a space for freedom in your life? But Jesus has been preaching this message of freedom to the disciples and the followers as he's trying to help them make their way to Jerusalem. We've been reading this for months, 10 chapters of it. Y'all been paying attention? Yes? Yes, he leaves, the transfiguration, and his eyes are set on Jerusalem, and the whole time he keeps talking to the disciples and to the community saying, look, you've got to free yourself from some stuff if you want to get to Jerusalem. There's no procrastination. You can't say, I'm going to wait till my children's college fund is done. Can't wait until, I really understand all the issues of faith before I make my way. There's no procrastination, no excuses. And he says to Martha, there's no resentment on this road. You got to free yourself from that. And then he says, how about this? Consider the lilies of the field. There can't be any worry on this road. You've got to trust the journey. And then he says to the woman bent over for 18 years, There's no shame on this journey. You get to free yourself from that. Keep opening these spaces of freedom so we can make our way. It's a journey and it's a destination that we have to be free enough to make in our own lives. So this morning, that's the invitation. It's this invitation to freedom in our faith and in our life. And if you ask me, what is the mission statement of Thistle Farms, the community that I've been a part of for 23 years, I would say it is freedom in community. That we need each other to make our way. We need to find these spaces together to be able to think and dream again. Why are we here? What is it we long for? What is that deep longing, like the deer for the water brook? And as I've witnessed the women in communities all over the world that are part of Thistle Farms, I believe that one of the great signs of that freedom is in the singing and dancing. How beautiful was that this morning with the kids saying, "Dance your dance." That's the sign that we get to have this beautiful space and hold hands and wave and sing and say, you know, we know that singing and dancing, it's not just a way to express ourselves, but it is a way to let the Spirit in. It's coming into us. You know that you forget so much about religion and church and all that, but if you sing something a couple times, you know it. I still know my camp songs. Sadly, they will never, ever leave me. Raise your hand if you don't know the movement to the Hokey Pokey. We learn this stuff and it comes in and it fills us. And these kids are learning this freedom in singing and singing about the freedom to dance. You know, and what I've seen in the women that I've watched dancing in different places has been, sometimes it's not dancing because, sometimes it's dancing in spite of. Sometimes it's dancing the story. Sometimes it's dancing the sorrow. Sometimes it's just dancing our truth. Franny always says dancing is an act of defiance. I have this memory of us being in Rwanda in January of this year, one of our very first global partnerships, the bug spray partnership where they make geranium oil. And we were out in the geranium fields and walking around and talking about the growth, meeting the new women hires, and watching the incredible transformation of how we can take plants and transform them into education and housing and healing for communities. And they were on a hillside, and some of the women started dancing. And Franny started dancing, and you know, I just want to say, I know they were laughing with you as you were dancing. But people started coming together, and there was a lot of dancing going on. And my memory is that I didn't dance, that I totally sat it out. I don't know if you have memories of that. Chances where you had that space for freedom and you chose to sit it out. And I don't even know why. I took a couple videos, and sometimes I think maybe if I was freer, I would dance. Maybe if some of the stuff hadn't happened to me in my life as a kid, I would dance. You know, maybe if I felt better in my body, I would dance. Maybe if I didn't feel so conspicuous, I would dance. Maybe if I was a better person, I would dance. I don't know what it is that keeps you out of that space, but it doesn't serve any purpose. I have another memory of several years back, we had a retreat for the whole community of Thistle Farms. And we went to the largest tiki hut in the world. That's how it's advertised in East Tennessee. The women came, they brought kids and family members and community partners. There was probably a couple hundred people at this tiki hut gathering. And we fished in the day, and we hiked, and we played, and I was in this beautiful space, and we gathered in this tiki hut, and we had styrofoam cups of ginger ale and Doritos, and we had CD players, which is like a round disc. And they turned on the music. And we started dancing, and people started dancing, and it was funny, and we were laughing. It was kind of like the dancing you do sometimes at the beginning of a wedding, and then it kind of crescendoed. And I have this memory of dancing with some of the kids from some of the women who had graduated from this 2-year residential program, and they were dancing wild, and I started dancing. And all of a sudden, for a moment, I could not have told you what gender I was. I could not have told you my age or my race or my creed. And I was transported into this space that I longed for more than anything, which is just freedom to be, to feel love and resurrection and joy. And I want that for all of us, to feel that sometimes. I am the Lord of the dance, says he. I've been dancing since the morning of creation starting. I am the dance, says she. I danced even in the shadow of the cross when times were hard. I am the dance of resurrection, that when they rolled the tomb away, they were still dancing and singing because we had been dancing all along. This is the invitation for us this morning. Dance then wherever you may be and celebrate the freedom in this love. Amen.